With the introduction of Chapter 5 Season 1, seemed like it was a massive improvement over the embarrassment that was Chapter 4, and while I do agree with this point, as the season does blow everything in Chapter 4 out of the water, there's still some massive flaws that I'd like to point out in this video. Don't get me wrong, I'm really enjoying this season, but there's some aspects that I really, and I mean really, have a problem with, starting with... Now before I get comments just yelling at me saying that these are some of the best locations Fortnite has made, I would like to disagree. Although there are really good ones like Classy Courts and Lavish Lair, which I'll talk about later, there are some pretty bad offenders and locations that, for lack of a better term, just come off as really lazy. If we look at Ritzy Rivera and then Snooty Steeps, they're the exact same location. Now turning our attention over to Exhibit B, Hazy Hillside, it is quite literally a Control-C, Control-V of Misty Meadows. Now I know there's gonna be comments saying that Fortnite's always done this, and that's true. Look at the Chapter 1 map. It was basically made entirely using the Save the World generation tool. But that was like 6 years ago. We've progressed so much to the point where you'd imagine that Epic Games doesn't need to copy and paste, and yet they still do, and it just comes off as super, super lazy to me. And this is one form of location. This chapter is just copy and paste, super lazy, but let's not forget that Rebel's Roost exists. The front entrance is literally a creative prefab retextured. And no, my friend, it does not end there. There is a landmark at the very bottom of the map that is bigger than Rebel's Roost and has more loot than it, along with a vault. And look, I understand they needed to have Rebel's Roost on the map because, you know, it's underground. They need a place for that clan to take base, but what I'm thinking about is why didn't they just retexture the walls of that mansion that they had down at the bottom of the map that had a vault and henchmen already set up and make the current Rebel's Roost just a landmark? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I could start talking about how Lavish Lair makes Rebel's Roost completely obsolete, as it is literally, and I'm not even like exaggerating, it is 12 times the size as Rebel's Roost. Now what type of critique would this be if I only just dogged on the game and said all the POIs were bad? Because the truth is, there are some really good ones. Classy Courts, Hazy Hillside, Reckless Railways, and of course Lavish Lair, alongside Risky Rails or Ruined Rails. Those are all amazing locations, and I don't understand why that type of location design wasn't applied to the rest of the map. Now, if you like any of the locations that I just accused of being lazy, power to you. I mean, people are allowed to like what they're allowed to like. I'm simply just saying my personal issues with the current POIs in the game. And that leads me to my second major issue with the season, being... Now, I don't really have that many issues with the main loot pool of the season. There's only really 2 weapons that need to either be removed or completely reworked next season. If you've played the game at all this season, you know the 2 I'm talking about, being the Frenzy Auto Shotgun and the Riot Shield. I'm gonna start with the Frenzy first because I don't have much to say about it. Every single time Epic Games has introduced any form of the drum shotgun into the loot pool, it is ruined seasons that would have been extremely good otherwise. Like, look at Chapter 3 Season 2. That season was so fun, and they just had to ruin it with a terrible decision to buff the drum shotgun. And if you somehow really like the Frenzy Auto, then number 1, please seek therapy. You're not mentally sane. And number 2, look at how fast it shreds my health in this clip. Yes, I could have played this better, but for a gun that shoots like an assault rifle, it really should not be doing this much damage this close up. And I would like to mention that this was a no build, so I did have overshield, and also, he had a green one, and it 3-shot me. Items like this genuinely just remind me of Orisa from Overwatch. It's just the fun police. It's just so blatantly overpowered, and the devs just don't care. So, conclusion, vault the Frezziato. It's really stupid. Now, moving on to the Riot Shield, I actually think that this item could be extremely balanced if they just changed one aspect about it. I'm of course talking about the time it takes for the shield to actually break. I mean, it is extremely stupid the amount of shots you need to hit someone with to get their shield to actually break. If you didn't know already, if you shoot enough bullets at someone carrying the Riot Shield, it will break and you have a small window of time to actually get shots off on the actual person before the shield goes back up. Now, long range, this isn't a problem because, you know, you can easily mag dump with an AR, but in this Nick A30 clip, you have to dump the entire magazine, and to be fair, he is a pro player, so this doesn't really properly show my point. Also, in the clip, you notice he does switch to a shotgun, and this would work. The only issue is, if your ping is, like mine, 60 or higher, it's useless because half the time your shotgun won't even deal damage. By the time you pull out and are actually able to shoot, the player would have gained their shield back again and just shred your health. Now, I am aware that the cluster clingers are a direct counter to the Riot Shield, instantly breaking it. I don't use explosives. I never carry cluster clingers. Why would I need to carry it just to counter one item? When designing an item for a game this popular, you should always take into consideration all playstyles, and when Epic added the Riot Shield, there's only really one good way to counter it, being forced to carry explosives. Now, switching to the mod benches, I don't have an issue with these. Literally just a slight nitpick of mine. I'd like to be able to store weapon presets like Call of Duty Warzone, but hey, it's just a nitpick. They don't really have to add that. And honestly, this brings me to my final issue with this season. Now, this doesn't apply to Battle Royale directly, that's why I'm starting off in the locker, but this is a change that they made in Chapter 5, and I can only assume they'll continue to make throughout the rest of this chapter. But I mean, just quickly scrolling through it, like we have characters, we have emotes, raps, lobby, instruments, cars. It seems nicely laid out, but the way that you have to navigate this is just so much more complicated than how it was before. And switching over to creative mode, same thing applies. You open what used to be the quick menu button, it opens island settings, everything's laid out in these tabs, which I'm gonna admit, it is more organized, but it just doesn't look as good as it did before in my humble opinion. And going to content, you have same thing. It's just laid out in a way that's so much more clunky to navigate through, even if it's more organized. Although not perfect, Chapter 5 Season 1 is a pretty strong start to a chapter. I mean, it's not as strong as Chapter 3, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited to see where the map's gonna go, how the gunplay is gonna evolve, and what mods are gonna add. So, this has been Skits King, signing off. Why did I say that?